When the mind is quiet, when the mind is silent, then arrives the new. The great work is the inner conquest of ourselves, of our true liberty in God. Many pseudo-occultists wish that they had the same powers as Moses. This is more than impossible, however, while the will remains trapped within each and one of those eyes we carry in the different undercurrents of our psyche. The essence is will consciousness, unfortunately functioning by virtue of our own conditioning. When the will is liberated, it then mixes or fuses, thus integrating itself with the universal will, so becoming sovereign. Individual will fused with universal will is able to realize all the miracles of Moses. There are 3 types of acts: those which correspond to the law of accidents, those which belong to the law of recurrence, events always repeated in every existence, acts which are intentionally determined by conscious will. Unquestionably, only people who have liberated their will through the death of myself will be able to accomplish new acts born of their free will. The normal, everyday acts of mankind are always the result of the law of recurrence, or merely the result of mechanical accidents. No one could obtain real illumination or exercise the absolute priesthood of the conscious will if one has not previously died radically within oneself, here and now. The worst circumstances of life, the most critical situations, and the most difficult deeds always result in being the most wonderful for intimate self-discovery. In those unexpected, critical moments, the most secreted eyes always surface when we least expect they will, and if we are alert, we unquestionably will discover ourselves. By working seriously and observing oneself from moment to moment, this sense will develop progressively. In the face of the sense of intimate self-observation, each one of those eyes which inhabit our interior really assumes one or another form, which secretly relates to the defect it personifies. Indubitably, the image of each of these eyes has a certain unmistakable psychological flavor by which we instinctively perceive, grasp, capture its intimate nature and the defect it characterizes. By taking advantage of critical moments, of the most unpleasant situations and the most adverse instances, we will discover, if we are alert, our distinctive defects, the eyes that we most urgently need to disintegrate. Let us remember that in pure esotericism, good is all that which is in its place, and bad is everything which is out of place. Why in a given moment do you feel superior to so-and-so? Why would you feel conceited when relating your triumphs? Couldn't you keep quiet when they gossiped about somebody you know? Are you sure that you are sincere in that conversation? When you justified yourself, when you boasted, when you related your triumphs and stories, repeating what you had already told, did you comprehend that you were in vain? It is interesting to know that in accordance with how such bestialities decrease in size, with how they lose volume and become smaller, they gain in beauty and slowly assume childlike forms. Finally, they disintegrate, becoming cosmic dust. Then the imprisoned essence is liberated, emancipated, awakened. The intellect can enjoy the luxury of labeling a defect with some name or other, of justifying it, or passing it from one level to another, etc., but it cannot by itself annihilate it. disintegrate it. We urgently need a fiery power superior to the mind, a power that is of itself capable of reducing any psychological defect to mere cosmic dust. Fortunately, such a serpentine power exists within us, that marvelous fire which the old medieval alchemists baptized with the mysterious name Stella Maris, the Virgin of the Sea, the Azoth of Hermetic science, always symbolized by the sacred serpent of the great mysteries. If, after having observed and profoundly comprehended a particular psychological defect, one or another we beg our own particular cosmic mother, since each of us has its own, to disintegrate it, to reduce it to cosmic dust, then the defect that the object of our interior work, will, you may be certain, lose volume and slowly become pulverized. No radical psychological change is possible if we do not first pass through the decapitation. Stella Maris is the philosophical fire that is found latent in all organic and inorganic matter. Psychological impulses can provoke the intense activity of this fire, and thus decapitation is made possible. The hour is at hand for us to know that we are evil, disguised in robes of sanctity, wolves in sheep's clothing, savages dressed as gentlemen, tyrants hiding behind the sacred sign of the cross. In revolutionary psychology, the necessity for radical transformation is made clear to us, and this is only possible by declaring a war to the death on oneself, merciless and cruel. Fortunately, John the Baptist taught us the secret path to die in oneself through the psychological decapitation. Without there being a genuine individuality, it is impossible to have continuity of purpose. If the psychological individual does not exist, if in each of us there live many people, if there is no responsible individual, it is absurd to expect continuity of purpose from someone. We know full well that within a person live many people, and therefore a clear sense of responsibility does not really exist in us. Since each I has its own criteria, its own mind, its own ideas, this changing of opinion, this constant fluttering about between organizations, from ideal to ideal, is absolutely normal. The person himself is nothing more than a machine that just as easily serves as a vehicle for one I as for another. Obviously, if one does not struggle against life, one is devoured by it, and rare are the aspirants who really do not allow themselves to be swallowed by life. With such a multiplicity of eyes existing within us, a permanent center of gravity is unable to exist. We know very well that the self-realization of our being demands continuity of purpose, and as it is very difficult to find someone who has a permanent center of gravity, it is not strange, therefore, that it is rare for a person to achieve profound inner self-realization. With certainty and in the name of truth, we state that the sun is conducting a very complex and difficult laboratory experiment within the intellectual animal mistakenly called man. There exist seeds that, when properly developed, can convert us into solar men. For the real seed of man, which is deposited in our sexual glands, to be able to germinate, one needs continuity of purpose and a normal physical body. If scientists continue experimenting with the glands of internal secretion, any possibility for development of the aforementioned seeds will be lost. Although it may seem incredible, the ants have already passed through a similar process in a remote past epoch of our planet Earth. The ants were a human race that created a very powerful socialist civilization. Then the dictators of that species eliminated the different religious sects and free choice, because these reduced their power, and they needed to be totalitarians in the most complete sense of the word. Under these conditions, having eliminated individual initiative and religious freedom, the intellectual animal was precipitated down the path of involution and degradation. To all the above were added scientific experiments, transplanting of organs and glands, hormonal tests, etc., which resulted in the gradual diminution in size and the morphological alteration of those human organisms, until finally they became the ants that we know. If we do not work on ourselves, we evolve and degenerate horribly. It is only possible to create solar men when there is true cooperation within each one of us. The creation of the solar man is impossible if we do not first establish within a permanent center of gravity. The creation of solar men is possible when one struggles to become independent of the lunar forces. There is no doubt that all those eyes that we carry in our psyche are exclusively lunar. We well know that evolution and her twin sister, involution, are simply two laws which constitute the mechanical axis in the whole of nature. One evolves to a certain, precisely defined point, and then in the involutive process begins. Every ascent is followed by a descent, and vice versa. It is not so easy to become a solar man when we carry the moon within us. The ego is lunar. The earth has 2 moons. The second of these is named Lilith and is located a little farther away than the white moon. Astronomers usually see Lilith as insignificant. Since it is very small in size, this is the black moon. The most sinister forces of the ego come to the earth from Lilith and produce psychological results that are infrahuman and bestial. Any eye expresses itself in the head in one way, in the heart in another, and in the sexual center in yet another way. We need to observe the eye that we have caught in a given moment, and it is urgent to see it in each of these 3 centers of our organism. In relations with other people, if we are alert and vigilant, as a sentry in wartime, we discover ourselves. Any annoyance or incident can lead us, via intimate self-observation, to the discovery of an I, whether it be self-love, envy, jealousy, anger, greed, suspicion, calumny, lust, etc. Before we are able to know others, we must know ourselves. If we put ourselves in the place of another, we discover that the psychological defects we attribute to others we have in abundance within ourself. To love our fellow man is indispensable, but one could not love another without first learning, in the esoteric work, to put oneself in the place of another person. But if one does not have the courage to see oneself, how could one put oneself in another's place? Do we find a certain person disagreeable? For what reason? Maybe he drinks. Let's observe ourselves. Are we so sure of our virtue? Are we certain that we do not have within an eye of drunkenness? It would be better, on seeing a drunkard acting ridiculously, to say, "That is me. What stupid things I'm doing." Are you sure that the lasciviousness and perversity you see in others does not exist within you? It would be better to intimately observe oneself, and in profound meditation, take the place of the person you despise. It becomes indispensable to know how to love our fellow man, to study gnosis, and to bring this teaching to all people. Otherwise, we will fall into egoism. If one is dedicated to the esoteric work on oneself, but does not give the teaching to others, his inner progress becomes very difficult due to lack of love for his fellow man. He who gives receives, and the more he gives, the more he will receive. But he who gives nothing, even what he has, shall be taken from him. Observation, judgment, and execution are the three basic factors for dissolution. First, one observes. Second, one judges. Third, one executes. In interrelations, there is self-discovery and self-revelation. Whoever renounces coexistence with his fellow man also renounces self-discovery. Any one of life's incidents, however insignificant it may seem, undoubtedly has a cause, an intimate actor within us, a psychic aggregate, an I. Self-discovery is possible when we find ourselves in a state of alert perception, alert openness. The I discovered in action must be carefully observed in our brain, heart, and sexual center. Any I of lust may manifest in the heart as love and in the brain as an ideal. But on placing our attention on the sexual center, we will feel a certain unmistakable, morbid excitation. The judgment of any I must be definitive. We need to sit it in the dock and judge it mercilessly. Any evasion, justification, or consideration must be eliminated if in reality we want to make ourselves conscious of the I that we wish to eradicate from our psyche. Prayer in the psychological work is fundamental to dissolution. We have need of a power superior to the mind if in reality we wish to disintegrate a particular I. To pray is to converse with God. We must appeal to God, the mother deep within us, if we truly want to disintegrate I's. There are as many fathers in heaven as people on earth. God, the mother, in our own intimate depths, is the feminine aspect of our Father who is in secret. He and she are certainly the two superior parts of our intimate being, undoubtedly. He and she are our own real being, far beyond the I of psychology. He unfolds into she, commands, directs, and instructs. She eliminates the undesirable elements which we carry within, on the condition that we work continuously on ourselves. When we have died radically, when all the undesirable elements have been eliminated, after much conscious work and voluntary suffering, we shall fuse and integrate with the Father-Mother. Then we shall be terribly divine gods, beyond good and evil. No I is instantaneously dissolved. Our Divine Mother must work and even suffer very much before achieving the annihilation of an I. Become inward-looking. Direct your prayer within, seeking within yourself your Divine Lady, and with sincere supplications, you will be able to speak with her. Beg her to disintegrate that I that you have previously observed and judged. Our Divine Mother lives in our intimate depths, beyond the body, the attachments, and the mind. She herself is an igneous power, superior to the mind. Our particular individual cosmic mother possesses wisdom, love, and power. In her there is absolute perfection. Good intentions and their constant repetition serve for nothing and lead nowhere. There is no use in saying daily, I will no longer be greedy. The eyes of greed will continue existing the different regions of our psyche. It is useless to withdraw from the world, to confine ourselves to a convent, or to live in a cavern. The eyes within us will continue existing. Unquestionably based in rigorous discipline, the essence can escape the pluralized eye and enjoy ecstasy. However, after the joy, it returns to within the myself. We only want to emphasize the need to dissolve eyes in order to achieve final liberation. The essence of a disciplined anchorite, accustomed to escaping the eye, repeats this feat after the death of the physical body, enjoying ecstasy for a time, later to return, like the genie of Aladdin's lamp, to the interior of the bottle, the ego, the self. Thus, no other remedy remains than to return to a new physical body, with the purpose of repeating his life on the stage of existence. Any attempt at liberation, as grandiose as it may be, is condemned to failure if it does not take into consideration the need to dissolve the ego.